Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. So after two long sessions and this session is just before lunch. So let it be more interactive. And as such, the topic is also very dry. It's not about AI and which will keep you awake. So we'll try my best to give real life examples, but would also request to please have plethora of questions so that it can be more interactive and we can have learning both sides. Yeah. So first, starting with the audit cycle. So initially what we did was, Murtuja sir, he talked about AI. Then we had a session on role of internal auditor. So now we deep dive into what are the basics, is the audit life cycle, if we talk about. And audit life cycle starts from right from planning to sampling to execution, then finally the report writing, which will be covered by Chetan, and then the discussions with the management, which is again a critical step. So what we intend to cover in today's session are the three topics. One is planning, execution, and sampling. So these are the three core basics of internal audit, which we will be discussing today in detail. Yeah. So starting with why is PSC, that is planning, sampling, and execution, is important. See, we spend around 80% of the time in executing the audits, right? So this, and then around 20% of the time gets spent on report writing. So if the 80% of the time which we are spending on the output, which will actually be discussed with the management, it is important that it is done well, right? So for example, if we are preparing a food and the right ingredients are not put, whichever way you decorate it, if it is not tasting well, it will not be liked by the management, it will not be liked by the client, right? As Manish rightly mentioned, that ultimate objective is the client satisfaction, and he believes in getting the output. And to get the output, you need to have the right ingredients of planning, sampling, and execution. Many times you will find that in case there is any fraud, the first question which a management would ask is, what was internal auditor doing? Why he missed that? So we can debate all along whether it is our responsibility or not, but at the same time, it is our responsibility to justify how the planning was done, why a particular area was not covered in the audit plan. Similarly, was the sampling methodology accurate in deriving that or detecting that fraud? And finally, during the audit, whether that was covered or not, right? Please feel free to ask any questions in case you have.
Sir, you give with your 100 experience what you have said 100.
Yes.
So look, every time you keep on adding one. That okay, I did this, so I found this. I did this, I found this. So you make it very juicy, lucid.
Perfect, perfect. So we'll do that. So for example, if we talk about the planning part. Now, assume a scenario where you land up in a plant and you start doing the scrap audits. आप गए scrap audit करने के लिए, but you found that as such the scrap has been disposed, right? So without preparing a plan, you are moving into the audit phase, which is not advisable, right? Similarly, there were various warehouses in a plant for a particular company. And you took one warehouse which was already covered by an external auditor in the past. So that has already been reported and again repeated by you, which will again not make it relevant to consider in the planning part. Or take for example, in one of our client, see, always what we do is we consider procurement as the most critical area. And we say that no, procurement should be covered every year. But what is very important is to see that what kind of procurements are there. For example, if 90% of the procurements are from group companies, right? Then there will not be any opportunity to save cost. It will be mainly about arriving the cost, right? So whether that becomes critical in that aspect or not. So it is important to select what audits are we taking and preparing the plan. Yeah.
You missed the one thing that okay, I brought my own goods company. We charge 100 rupees against market price of 10 rupees. Good. For that reason, maybe yes. But you have a good quantity control. Okay, what
Correct.
is input output?
Correct.
My input is 100. Am I able to say 90 or 30? So where is that balance 70? Is it scrap or invisible losses?
Exactly. So that would get covered under the plant review, under the BOM management and all. In terms of negotiation, your scope becomes limited if there are internal procurement, right? Now, if we talk about the overall planning gamut, it starts with the audit universe, right? For example, now what are the various inputs for preparing an audit universe? We need to have the list of areas. The first is what are the risks which are relating to the organization. See, the audit universe will be available online, you can download that and all, but what the client would require is a customized audit universe, and based on that, a plan is getting prepared. For example, one of the inputs for an audit universe would be the ERM risk. What are the risks which are relevant for an organization? If as part of the ERM, there is a vendor concentration risk, that most of the items are being procured from a vendor, like top 5 vendors, procurement is around 80%. So that becomes one of the critical area which we need to consider while preparing the audit plan. Similarly, there could be a possibility of a customer concentration risk. So if there are few customers who are primarily composing your sales, then the service delivery, the customer service aspects becomes very important, which needs to be considered while preparing the audit plan. So the risk, identifying what are the key risks for an organization and jotting them down and then linking it with the internal audit plan will be helpful, and you will be able to capture what are the risks associated for an organization. Similarly, a fraud risk assessment. So in case in an organization there has been, like you have a fraud register where all the frauds which has happened over 5-year period are jotted down, and those become an input for your internal audit plan. So if an audit plan is prepared in isolation without considering the risk factors, without considering the past frauds which has happened in an organization, you are bound to miss critical areas which may be important for a particular company. The other aspect is linking the trial balance with your audit processes. So all the GLs which are there, if you are able to map to each of the process, you will be able to see whether all the areas are covered or not. For example, the CSR expenses, again, is one of the critical areas which should be covered and at times is missed by the internal auditors. Then finally, what is important is the inputs from the management and stat auditors. Plan prepared, but in case the inputs of management is not obtained, or the MD or the CFO while preparing the plan, again, it will not be customized. It will not capture all the relevant elements which are required. For example, in one of our clients, there was a office space, like they were shifting office from one location to other location. As an internal auditor, when you're doing the audit or preparing the plan, you may not know of these activities. You may get these kind of inputs from the CFO or from the management. Like in this case, when we got the input, we took that as an area. And we found that there were various anomalies which got discovered. So at times, right inputs from the management will also help you in identifying the right areas. And once your audit universe is prepared, it is important that it is broken down into various sub-areas, quarterly, monthly, along with the sub-process. Taking an audit area just procure to pay is a very general statement. Rather than procure to pay, what we should do is, negotiation is a topic in itself. Then vendor evaluation is a topic in itself. System controls in procurements are topic in itself. Bill passing is a topic in itself. So break down the areas into subtopics and then focus on those areas. You will yield better results. Because typically in an audit, we spend 3 to 4 weeks. Now, if you take procure to pay, all areas will get equally distributed. Rather than that, if you focus on some key aspects or you take and deep dive a particular area, you will get better results. And once the audit plan is prepared, it is very important to roll that out to the auditees or the process owners in a timely manner, because at times we face that conflict. Auditee bolte hain, मुझे तो पता ही नहीं था ये audit करना था. So it is important that HODs also are intimated well in advance and they are aware of their audit. Yes, we can have certain surprise elements, we can have certain surprise audits, but those should not be largely, all the audits can't be surprise audit कि मैं अचानक से आज याद आया मैं चलो procurement audit कर लिया. That's how it should not happen. There should be advance notice which should be given to the process owners so that they are also able to manage the times. At times we also have to consider, like for example, some companies, the Diwali is the main, for FMCG companies, Diwali may be the main season where they will be mostly occupied. Now taking a marketing or a sales audit during that period of time is not warranted. You can't insist that, no, I need to audit this at this point of time. So we need to be flexible also while planning the audits. And like for finance function, if there may be certain material impacts and book entries need to be passed, so you can't plan those audits in March or April. And in case there are any observation, they won't be able to post those entries. See, earlier the plan was more static, but now the way the situation is, it has to be more dynamic, and you need to keep on updating your plan based on the other scenarios which are there. For example, in case you have prepared a plan at the beginning of the year and there is a new plant which has started, so you can't ignore that aspect and you say that, no, I will stick to those 10 areas which has been identified. You need to have a dynamic audit plan so that it will cater to the risk or what the management actually wants. In case any frauds is getting discovered during the, when you are taking any assignments, then those kind of inputs are also required from the management, and you need to update your plan accordingly. In case there are any major organizational restructuring, those aspects need to be built in. For example, there is a new procurement head who has just joined. So it is important that once he has joined, suppose 6 months down the line, it is important that you review all the procurements which has changed. For example, in one of our clients, what we did was, there is a procurement, means you have a listing of all the items which are purchased. So what we saw was vendor-wise, what are the increase in the procurement values. And we found there were certain vendors where there were drastic increase, like 80% of the volume of the business got increased. And there were certain new vendors also which got introduced. And this could be correlated to the head of the procurement because he came new, he brought in these vendors. So those becomes red flags and you need to identify those areas and then deep dive further. So we need to keep our eyes and ears open to see what are the changes which are happening in surroundings and accordingly keep our plan dynamic and keep on changing that. Any questions? Yeah. See, normally what we see is there are most of the companies where they have multiple plants, warehouses, regional offices. One of the challenges is that how do we cover all the plants? How do we cover all the warehouses or the regional offices? Any suggestions?
Zoom call. Where everybody said you will be available tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock, we all 5 will talk. Each one will give his own input and will question me. No, I don't want to do it, I want to do it. See, unless you have the interactive sessions, people will not know what are your requirements.
So,
They will not understand.
so Zoom call again.
Not necessarily Zoom. It means interactive. Anything which could be interactive, which could be confirmed and explained to him. That's all. Zoom is one of the methods.
Yes, correct. So now see, there are 30 plants there are 25 warehouses, and all needs to be covered, but you have limitation of resources. You can't have so many resources to cover all the plants, right? But still, you need to give comfort to the management that there is a reasonable assurance that all the key controls are getting covered, right? So in that scenario, what we do? See, one example is we do virtual audits. But how much effective the virtual audits would be? Again, there would be certain controls which can be checked virtually. Any other suggestions? Yeah. So, see, what we do at some of our clients is we take some of the key processes. For example, if we take procurement, those procurement, we identify certain key controls, and there are certain non-key controls. And then those particular areas are covered across all the plants. How it helps is, we are able to give a report to the management that you have 30 plants. Out of 30 plants, these are the processes. In 8 plants, these processes are in red. In 12 plants, these are in yellow, and remaining it is in green, right? There are some processes which is red across all the plants. So if it is red across all the plants, that means there is some design level changes which are required drastically, right? If there are inconsistencies, there are certain reds, green, yellow, that indicates that their design is in place. There are some plants which may be doing well, but then there are some plants where it needs hand holding, or the best practices needs to be percolated. So this is one way. Second, in one of our clients, what we did was, we took 5 plants, we deep dived into those 5 plants, identified all the findings, and then we followed a self-assessment approach. So based on the findings of the 5 plants, we thought that this is the DNA of the company. We prepared our checklist, we gave it to all the remaining plants, asked them to fill those data, share us the findings, and then we validated that. In a way, we gave a comfort to the management overall by covering the 30 plants, and next year when I will deep dive into 5 other plants. So this kind of structure at times helps and assure that your overall planning level is better. Similarly, see, there are large conglomerates who are into B2B and B2C business, right? Now, if an organization is both into B2B and B2C business, you can't have a same plan for both the divisions. There are nuisances for each business. For example, see, the production part and all remain same, but in case of B2C, will be make to stock and the other will be make to order, which will definitely your inventory levels will play a key role again in case of make to stock, because you are going to pile up the inventories, you need to look around that. Similarly, in B2C, the sales, the schemes, discounts, those will play a major role. Then if we talk about influencer spends, again, that is one of the major areas which is critical for a B2C company. So at times what we do is, in a B2C organization, we take marketing spend as one audit. But marketing has various breakups, like influencer spend is one of the major risk area for any of the clients. So if you focus only on the influencer spend, you will have various observations and you will be able to identify the red flags rather than covering only marketing as one area. Yeah, now, see, at times, the normal, like when we do the audits, we identified the plan, we prepared the plan, we identified there are 9 audit areas. But the management says that you need to cover only 6. I won't be able to allow you to cover 9 areas, right? But all these areas are critical, correct? What you do in those situations? Is there a solution? But yes, if all are critical, then?
You are not superhuman, no, you cannot have 200 auditors.
Correct.
You cannot have 200 auditors.
Correct.
Stop the business that, okay, you have to answer me, no, that is
Correct, correct.
In the phase when everything will go in a one go. One shot things will not.
Correct, agree. So, see, in those situations, what we have seen and how it helped us was, uh, see, you have 9 areas, but 9 areas will have various sub-processes, right? And each sub-process, if you dissect, will have certain key controls, certain non-key controls, right? So, if you want to have the flavor of all the 9 areas, but within 6, the budgeted piece, look at all the key controls and try to cover for the other 3 remaining areas and leave out certain non-key controls for those areas which are critical. So what mistakes at times we do is we categorize a particular audit area as critical, major, medium, but there are various processes which are attached to those audit areas which needs to be looked into and seen which would be my focus areas. And see, typically the way we prepare an audit plan is once you have an audit universe, you categorize each areas into critical, major, medium, and low. Critical needs to be covered every year, major once in 2 years, medium once in 3 years, low once in 4 years. That is a systematic way of deriving what should be your 3-year or 4-year internal audit plan. Again, when we are devising this plan, it is important to understand each and every aspects of what would be various sub-processes which I'm going to audit, so that you can focus on those. For example, when we were preparing the plan, in one of our client, plant maintenance emerged out as one of the key focus areas based on the past findings. So we took that as a focus area under the entire gamut of the plant operations. And when we deep dived, we found that there were certain items or there were certain spares which were used, though the machines were not under breakdown. So linking the spares with the breakdown of the machineries, which indicate that those spares actually would not have come to our plant, but still have been shown as consumed in for a particular equipment. Similarly, certain breakdowns happening, but no preventive maintenance for those machines being carried out, which indicates, though on paper the preventive maintenance were there and they were done on a quarterly basis, but again and again the machines were under breakdown, which indicates that those were actually dummy PMs which were carried out by the third party. Similarly, similarly for weighbridge operations, again, like at times what we do is we take inventory management as one area, and under that the weighbridge gets subsumed. But weighbridge is an audit in itself for a manufacturing company. And there are many things which actually can be looked into when we are doing a weighbridge analysis. For example, if you are, currently the vehicles which are coming, they have a gross weight and a tear weight, right? And if you find that the same vehicle has different tear weights, which would be various red flags which will definitely emerge based on the audit. Similarly, what we have seen is there are, in one of our clients, the calibration was happening, the calibration of the weighbridge was being taken care by the same vendor year after year. And there was the death of the proprietor of that particular calibrating agency, and they appointed a new vendor to calibrate the weighing machine. When he got appointed, he started from the basics, and he found that there was a tool which was there underneath the weighbridge. Through that, through an app, they were monitoring the entire weighbridge operations. So they were manually changing the weights and all. So what I'm trying to talk about is, don't have an internal audit plan as a mechanical process: inventory, procure to pay, order to cash, hire to retire, production. Don't have that, because those will not give you findings. It is like an ocean in itself. Procure to pay is an ocean in itself. Inventory is an ocean in itself. Deep dive into smaller areas, you will find values in that. Because if you take weighbridge as an operation, अब आपको 21 दिन तो spend करने हैं weighbridge पे. अब 21 दिन आप spend करोगे तो आप कुछ ना कुछ नया निकालोगे, right? And you will find observations. Like weighbridge में, they always have a software, right? do an audit of that software. हमने एक client में when we went into the software, we found that there is a possibility of manually editing the formula through which you can derive the weight. So 10 टन आ रहा है, मैंने 10 into 0.1 factor डाल सकता हूँ मैं. Into 1 factor, into 2 factor डाल सकता हूँ. So that guy was he was doing into 2. Those manual changes were allowed. So doing an audit of that. Then reconciling what is the weighbridge data with the gate registers will yield different kind of results. Then through AI now, what we are doing on weighbridge is, you have certain positions of various cameras. Like आपको number plate दिखती है, आपको दिखती है कि vehicle खाली है कि नहीं है, भरी हुई है, right? So now those readings of the whatever are this image which gets captured in the camera, कि ये vehicle number है, through AI we are able to read all those images and tally it with what was the vehicle number which was reported in the weighment slip. Through AI we are able to see that the image, whether the vehicle was empty which was reported for all the images. When we do audit, हम sample basis में कुछ 5 image, 10 image ले सकते हैं. But through AI you can read all the images and see whether those image which is there is empty या वहाँ पे कोई सामान पड़ा है just to manipulate the weights. Any questions on planning? Yeah, please. See, we have our own customized Audit IQ as a tool, but then there are, there is a data analytics and then there is AI, right? Data analytics is about analyzing the data. Then there you have an idea which is available. Now AI, these are very niche tools. You can't tools. These are actually programming which people do that and they are able to identify that. So we have a customized tool which we have created to analyze all these images. Any questions? Yeah. Sorry, not audible. Mic.
I came to know about one of the process, like especially in the P2P, you are telling about the payment process for a client, for example, was done by AI tool. So it was an assignment for doing audit of an AI. So it's first of all we should know that, and it was new for me also. So what are the planning you will do in this? Because it can be new for even for my partner also sometimes.
A very relevant question, I can tell you. Recently at one of our client, what we asked them is a simple question. Do you have list of all the tools which at an organization level which have been implemented across all the functions? Actually they struggled. They struggled to have the list of all the tools which is used by sales, procurement, warehousing, supply chain team, finance team, right? So the first step, in fact, that now forms part of our audit area for all our clients. The tools / the automation review. So after a struggle, I will tell you, after a struggle, means it took them 1 month because it requires coordination of all the departments. Because sales को चाहिए था, उसने एक tool खरीद लिया, फिर वो ठीक नहीं लगा, दूसरा खरीद लिया, AMC चालू है. So after a struggle, they were able to prepare the list of all the tools which at a company level they are using it. This was a large organization. And once the list was available, we found there were certain inactive tools. But AMCs were being paid. कोई देख नहीं रहा है. दूसरा, there were certain tools where data privacy was going for a toss. वो data जा रही है, कोई sign नहीं है, कोई agreement नहीं है. Third, what we saw was these tools. आप कोई भी tool खरीद रहे हो तो it is important that it is giving that desired output, right? Some tools were used only as just a mechanism to upload the data, and उसका functionality, what we did was उस tool का, for example, Freight Tiger हमने लिया. Freight Tiger ka, we started mapping what was the functionality which was agreed by Freight Tiger, saying that you will have reverse auction mechanism, you will have freight masters, you will have certain emailers which will be going to the transporters. Sare mechanism while you are pitching, definitely Freight Tiger sab kuch batayega, right? But what is being used? So there were 8 to 10 parameters which a particular vendor will agree, and finally what is being used is 3 parameters. Then what about remaining 6 parameters? Why are we paying for that? Is it required? Do we need to go back? So those kind of analysis will start happening. Similarly, koi bhi tool hai, see, whichever tool is there, it has to give the output, right? And it has to give the right MIS. So start thinking in that direction. So now all our clients, one of the audit area is review of all the tools.
And one more question not related to this, like fraud risk. So as an internal auditor, we are not expected to gain the, or even if we find some fraud, the client is not happy or is not ready to give you the more data. One of the example I handle in one of the client, I asked for the change report in SAP logs, because if anyone is changing something, it's get recorded. So it's very hard to get, and even eventually I didn't get anything from that.
Yeah. So see, getting data definitely is difficult. I agree, and having us accountable if the data is not received is also wrong, right? But at the same time, see, if the data is not shared and we have not identified the findings, then no one can hold us responsible for the fraud which would have happened in any organization. But what is our duty is that, see, identifying the right area, identifying the right sample, and executing it with the right documents. That will lead to the belief to the management that they have done their duty. And now if the fraud is not getting discovered, maybe because those samples were not selected, still they will understand that. But if you are not selecting the right audit areas, you are not deep diving into those aspects. For example, the way I mentioned, Weighbridge may there would have been a fraud. Abhi, as part of inventory audit, you have never looked at Weighbridge operations. Then definitely management has the right to ask you why this core area, the white elephant which was there in the room, was missed, right? So these things are important. And there are various ways to identify the change logs and all, or at least to report that as a design level gap in the report if these are not shared with us. For example, see, bank account changes. So bank account number changes of a vendor is one of the critical risks, right? Now, if we get a log of all the changes of bank account, अभी मुझे देखना है कि सच में कहीं किसी employee ने अपना bank account number तो नहीं डाल दिया because of the instead of the vendor bank account, right? And the payment will go to that employee, and PO, GRN, everything will pass because कोई नहीं देखने वाला bank account master में क्या डाला हुआ है, automatically it gets linked, right? So it is a very important control. Now to see this, right? You may have a log of changes. अभी आपके पास 600 log of changes आ गए. 600 बार, because it's a large organization, 1 लाख cases में से 600 बार में bank account change हुआ है. Now 600 cases to individually check the emails, check the emails from vendor, check the account blank checks is impossible. Or you need to have that kind of resources. So what you do then in those cases? So, right. Perfect. So now there is a functionality through which you can identify who is the payee, whom the amount is being transferred through a 1 rupee transaction. In various banks it is allowed. Still there are few banks where it is not there. But still, see, you are validating the payee details, correct? Now, what if there was a vendor account X, employee in between change it to Y, and then again he's restored it to X. So आप आज कर रहे हो, past का तो आपको पता नहीं है, right? So what becomes important is not look at as-on situation. Like in this scenario, if there are 500 accounts, see, we can't do wonder to identify which one is the red flag. but then there are ways to reach to that place. So for example, if there are 500 such cases, 600 such cases, try and identify in a particular vendor how many times the bank accounts have changed. So that will give one red flag. Then try and identify if there are 3 persons who are having the access to change the bank account. Which of the person is always changing the bank accounts, right? वो आपको एक further limitation, further insights देगा. Third is, try and see that when the bank account was changed. See, normally, if you see the psychology of a fraudster, उसको क्या लगता है कि whenever he is doing certain transactions which are wrong, he will always feel that someone is observing him. वो mind में चलेगा ही कि कुछ ना कोई मुझे को देख लेगा, देख रहे हैं, सब करेंगे. So always what he will try to do is, he will do it after office hours or on holidays when no one is there. Trend, unless he is a legend, जिसने बहुत सारे frauds किए हैं तो उसको छोड़ देते हैं. Normal इंसान जो है, he will always be fearful of someone watching him, right?
After office hours and holidays.
Yes, so try and take the time stamp कि इस पर्टिकुलर टाइम पे ये हुआ है. तो आपको लग रहा है कि कोई रात को 11 बजे एंट्रीज हो रही है, यस, देन 500 में से इफ यू स्टार्ट फिल्टरिंग दैट आउट, यू विल understand, yes, these are now my probable cases which I need to further deep dive or take the right samples. Right? Any questions so far? Yeah, please. Completely agree. So, see, there are both ways of looking at it. See, this is beyond, means this is 100% sure कि if there is an ERP transaction happening and if we do the audits, there are going to be various red flags. Because transition is not a small exercise. You have to have the data moved from one system to other system. There are various controls which needs to get replicated and all. So there are 2 styles of management. One style is that, यार पहले मेरे को अपना घर ठीक कर लेने दो, फिर then you do the audits. And the other style is that, यार अभी तो right time है, you plug the gaps so that in future I don't have any issues. So what, and see, मेरे को घर ठीक कर लेने दो, बाद में देखेंगे. The reason is that these findings may get reported to audit committee, may to the board, right? So what we have seen is, what organizations normally prefer is that you do a management audit, where you come out with all the gaps. It's just to support the management. It's not an audit. You are entering into the second or first line of defense, where you are actually helping the management to put the process. Like in some of the ERP transition phase, we were part of the implementation team as an representing internal auditor, telling them these are the controls which are important and needs to be plugged, so that those get plugged at the design stage itself, right? For example, there are certain open systems in vendor master. If you tick or untick them, your entire 3-way match will go for a toss. So if I put a tick there, then what will happen is after PO, you can directly pass the invoice without any GRN. You assume that there is a 3-way match which is happening, but that goes for a toss. आपको पता ही नहीं चलेगा कि background में हो नहीं रहा है. So various configuration related controls, various mandatory controls, which gets highlighted if you are doing a transition review. जैसे at some of the organization, they had already built a control in EC6, ECC6, and when they moved to HANA, those controls were not replicated. When we did the audit, we found that वो अभी कुछ है ही नहीं, because those were customized controls which were built in. Those were not standard controls which got replicated. Any questions? Maybe a few more examples rather than moving through the slides. I think that will be better. For example, in one of our clients, we were doing the traveling review. आपके जो traveling expenses होते हैं सब, right? And in pharma companies, FMCG companies, these are in bulk. So normally when we do the audits, what we do, we will take certain samples, top values, top 20 transactions का expense list निकाल लिया, या फिर some combination of geographical locations and all, या फिर 1 month all the transactions. पूरे महीने में जो भी transactions हुए हैं traveling के, those we will take and we will start auditing them, right? So this is one approach. Now just think, what we did was we selected certain employees rather than going by month. We selected certain employees and took their samples throughout the year. So 30 employees, 40 employees, then again there is a science behind which employees needs to be selected. You can't, better not to select people who are traveling overseas because chances of errors would be less. Then there is a mix of each grades and all, location wise and all. But once we started selecting the samples, I will just tell you how differently we started looking at the things. अभी normal आपने travel voucher अगर एक महीने का देखा, हर employees का normally 1 or 2 times the claims will happen, right? Not more than that. एक महीने में और क्या होगा? But when we started selecting it employee wise, हमने अब हमको एक employee का पूरा एक साल का journey पता है, right? He would have claimed 30 or 40 claims. So पहला एक देखा कि he was, जो भी उसके claims आ रहे थे hard copy claims, the invoices were very neat and clean. मतलब एकदम same और एकदम सेम मतलब बाकी सब चीज़ें चेंज है बट एकदम नया जैसा इनवॉइस लग रहा था, कोई सीरियल नंबर कुछ प्रॉब्लम नहीं बट एकदम नया जैसा लग रहा था. सो और वो हर बार वैसा दिख रहा है. देयर इज अ ट्रेंड विच इज एमर्जिंग फॉर दैट एम्प्लॉय, राइट? आइदर ही इज वेरी टाइडी पर्सन जो एकदम सब चीज़ें अपनी संभाल के रखता है, थोड़ा सा भी कुछ फोल्डिंग वगैरह कुछ भी नहीं ऐसा दिख रहा है, और एक्चुअली ही इज फैब्रिकेटिंग द इनवॉइस. सो इनफैक्ट द ऑप्शन इज दैट वी कैन स्टॉप एट दैट एंड वी कैन सेंड इट एज अ रेड सिग्नल. But what we did was we also, as an auditor, just ऐसे ही उस auditor से मिलने गए to understand what he is doing and all, normal chit chat and all. And we, the diary where he was noting down, we started looking at the way he was noting it down. And we could see that the way he is writing, actually he is the one, उसका जो diary है वो पूरी मुड़ी हुई है. The way he is writing the things, he is not that neat and clean person. So which gives an indication that there is a possibility that these invoices are forged, right? So after then you enter into a forensic mode where you try to validate those kind of invoices and see what are the stories behind that. But this is one of the trend which will emerge. Similarly, अगर कोई serial number भी same होगा, so if you select an employee, then you will see that trend. अगर आपने एक महीना लिया तो वो trend वगैरह कुछ नहीं मिलेगा, correct? So and in fact now we have an AI tool. What it does is, like in one of our clients, which is geographically presence. So Kannada में भी है, आपका German में भी है, सब language में there are bills which are there. So what does AI tool does is, ये सारे invoices scan करता है, पूरा Excel में ले आता है in English. Now you can do whatever analytics you want to do because all the data is now in Excel. So 100% of the population. So gradually you will see that sampling methodology, whatever samples you are getting selected will definitely narrow down and you will be targeting the entire population through the tools. Any questions so far? Yeah, please. No, correct. So see, 2-3 things. One is on the topic of monthly audits, right? And this just wanted to share before coming to your question. See, monthly audits at times becomes very monotonous, right? आप हर महीना रिपोर्ट देते जाओगे और वो सेम चीजें आती जाएगी. Trust me, after 10 months or after 12 months, client will stop hiring you. They will say that टाटा बाय बाय, कुछ वैल्यू एडिशन नहीं आ रहा है, आप मंथली कर रहे हो, मुझे एश्योरेंस तो ठीक है यार, कोई भी स्टैंप लगा के दे देगा, आई नीड वैल्यू एडिशंस, राइट? सो हाउ इट हैज हेल्प्ड अस इन मंथली ऑडिट्स वेयर एवर वी आर डूइंग इट, वी हैव मेड दिस द स्कोप इन सच अ वे, देयर आर सर्टन कोर प्रोसेस, देयर आर सर्टन डायनामिक प्रोसेस. So core process are the fundamental process which definitely I need to carry it out, right? And there are certain dynamic process which I will keep on changing, to give a flavor to my assignment. For example, when we were doing a account payable audit, Normally हम देख रहे हैं कि whether there are normal approvals for authorizing the payment, whether there are backup supportings and all, right? What we did was, we did a master review as part of payable, saying that vendor masters and employee, are there any connections which are happening? Are there any employees who are directors in some other companies through PAN and DIN linkage? Are there any employee who has a PAN number and a GST number as well, right? So keep on having certain analytics added to your scope to give it a different flavor every time you are doing a monthly review. You will have plethora of observations and it will help you to keep floating around, right? Now to answer your question, see, it is always important to agree with the client a particular cutoff period. And after that, whatever entries get passed, we have a clear-cut agreement with the client that those will get covered in the subsequent month. So we take as a period cutoff, and any entries which are passed later to that, so suppose if we are doing an audit in May, we will take those entries and report it as part of the audit in May, though these may be backdated as part of April. And similarly, like in SAP, when we were talking about period controls and all, in one of our clients, what we saw, and it is important to do a systems audit. So whenever you log into SAP, you have a user ID which you use while logging into SAP while approving any transactions. So, and at the back end, your IP address also gets captured, right? So if you want to identify, are there any employees who are sharing their passwords? It is very difficult to do this way. आपको कैसे पता चलेगा किसी ने password share किया कि नहीं किया? But if you design and if you derive a report saying that ये particular PC में there were 4 login IDs which were used. So अगर एक PC है उसमें 4 आदमी का ID use हो रहा है, that means that person who is using this PC, either he is idle, he is giving it on rent to someone, उसके सारे employees उसका PC use कर रहे हैं, which is not possible. That means he is using IDs of 4 persons. उसके पास उसका password है, वो इसी PC से use कर रहा है, right? So try and come out with something new which will always, and these checks will not take much time. आपने एक report निकाला डाल दिया. So monthly audit में अगर आपका ऐसा finding आ गया, they will feel that yes, something new is coming in. So you have to keep on brainstorming and add certain analytical favors to your monthly audits to make it more relevant and useful.
Sir, I was saying, sorry, one person is having outstanding for more than 6 months. How can he keep taking credit? Is he earning so much that he can give 30% credit? He can have 30% margin? So then it was identified, it was understood that the person who is giving the credit, he himself is an employee of the person and is a different name. And he is a big goon, big gunda. And the person, people wanted to change him. In fact, he made a big tabasha. You cannot change me.
Correct.
So, see, that's the, as you said, red flag. Which red flag will come? If you will give a red flag when the bills are not paid for 4 months, you say, poor fellow is not paid for 4 months. Poor fellow is not paid for 4 months, but he is a goon. He is having all the authorities. Because he is using somebody else's names and as you said, this PAN number is used so many companies, so many names he is using for so many companies, he is a director. That is what it gives the flavor.
Correct. So in fact, some of our clients, just to add on that, and he rightly said, now most, like they get the vendor due diligence done. So as part of vendor due diligence, level 1, level 2, level 3. So as part of level 1 due diligence, they see that whether any particular vendor has some politically influenced person. So those kind of checks are being done to ensure that they are hiring the right vendor or the customer to avoid these kind of problems. Any questions? We'll just quickly run through the slides. See, yeah, maybe yes. So in terms of executing the audits, it is important how we are communicating with the process owners, because from there we are going to get the maximum data, right? And so planning, sampling is all about desktop. When you are executing, you are moving from desktop to field. You are moving from data to human being. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल डेस्कटॉप टू फील्ड का बताते हैं. सर ने बोला था कि थ्रू जूम कैमराज यू suppose if you are interacting with the people and doing audits. Abhi, this was one of the company where we were doing the audits of warehouses. And actually they were very well automated. Unke, they had various cameras which were located across. And in fact the cameras, through cameras they were also able to detect whether the person is wearing PPE or not. Ye sab level ka advanced level of technology was being used. 2 years considering this, and they had a big boardroom which had cameras projected and I can see which warehouse and all. Promoter was saying आप यहाँ बैठ के audit करो, सब दिख रहा है आपको और हमारा advanced technology है, why you want to travel and spend OP for us and then there will be some persons who will be doing that. You do that. 1 या 2 साल वैसे किया and then we thought let's at least move to the plant. So when we went to the plant, see in all the cameras there will be certain blind spots. आप कैमरा को कैसे भी प्लेस कर लो, there will be certain blind spot जो शातिर है उसको पता चल जाएगा कहाँ से निकालना है मटेरियल, राइट. सो वेयर द मटेरियल्स वेयर गेटिंग लोडिंग अनलोडेड, देयर वाज अ कैमरा विच वाज देयर, बट साइड में इतना जगह, इतना पैसेज था. सो दिस गाय वाज टेकिंग द मटेरियल आउट, लाइक ही वाज वॉकिंग लाइक दिस एंड दीज वे स्मॉल नंबर्स एंड यहाँ से निकाल के फिर इधर दे रहा है, तो कैमरा में कुछ आ नहीं रहा था. सो वन ऑप्शन वाज, ये चीज़ जो थी हमारे पास कोई प्रूफ था नहीं बिकॉज वी हैड नॉट डन एनी रिकॉर्डिंग्स एंड ऑल. हम गए वहाँ पे विजिट किया, बस चुपचाप निकल के आ गए. वी टोल्ड द प्रमोटर, प्रमोटर बोला नहीं ऐसा नहीं होता है सब, बिकॉज देयर वाज नो फिजिकल वेरिफिकेशन में कोई डिफरेंसेस वगैरह नहीं आ रहे थे. व्हाट वी रिक्वेस्टेड प्रमोटर इज दैट लेट मी सेंड, मीन्स यू सेंड वन ऑफ योर IT पर्सन एंड चेंज द पोजिशनिंग ऑफ द कैमरा विदाउट एनीवन नोइंग दैट. तो नॉर्मल बंदा गया, उसने सर्विस के बहाने कैमराज के पोजीशन चेंज किए and everything was visible in that camera. So as an auditor, अपन कभी ऐसा नहीं सोचेंगे कि कैमरा का पोजीशन चेंज करना है, right? We will never go to that level. But then these things are there which actually helps you in identifying a fraud or maybe something new, which will emerge out of this. Something else. वो तो है. For example, we were talking about tools, reverse auction tools and all. See, initially आपके पास कोटेशंस होते थे वेर यू यूज टू सी हैंड राइटिंग मैच, यू यूज टू सी कि फ़ोन नंबर सेम है कि नहीं है, ईमेल आईडी सेम है कि नहीं है फॉर स्क्रैप वेंडर्स, फॉर वेंडर्स एंड ऑल. नाउ दे आर रिवर्स ऑक्शन टूल, वहाँ पे तो समवन इज लॉगिंग इन, बिडिंग, कुछ नहीं कर सकते. सो व्हेन वी आर डूइंग अ फ्रॉड रिस्क असेसमेंट फॉर वन ऑफ आवर क्लाइंट, वी आइडेंटिफाइड, वी वांटेड टू हैव अ डेटा ऑफ द IP एड्रेस फ्रॉम विच द पर्सन इज कोटिंग, कौन सा लॉगिन ID यूज़ कर रहा है और कौन से IP एड्रेस से कर रहा है. So after lot of effort, we were able to find out from the vendor and get the IP address. And we found there was many cases, there were around 8 to 9 cases, जहाँ पे same PC में बैठ के लोग 3 नाम से quotation दे रहे हैं. So now, see earlier it was hard copies, now it has changed to tool. So tool will have certain things which we need to add in our control listing. It can't be the same format कि अरे हार्ड कॉपी देख के मैं ऑडिट कर लूँ. Any questions?
So we'll have to think 10 years down the line that today people are treating me like this because how people will cheat me. I am the step ahead of the cheat and not my good friends and colleagues.
Correct. True. I think that is important. Yeah, again, see, one of the very tool as an auditor we have is YY analysis. जो fundamental है, but at times we miss. For example, अगर आप लोगे, suppose there is a dip in sales, and you ask the HOD, what is the reason why the sales has reduced? वो बोलेगा business कम हुआ, right? You have an option to stop there, but if you ask business क्यों कम हुआ, he will say that it moved to the competitor, which is again an obvious answer. तो आप सोचोगे हाँ यार competitor के पास गया, ठीक है ना, क्या दिक्कत है? Dynamics change. If you ask further why it went to the competitor, he will have to answer something, right? So suppose why it went to the competitor, he says that we increased our price. So now we increased our price, मतलब मैंने price बढ़ाया but उसने नहीं बढ़ाया, right? So थोड़ा सा ऑडिट एलिमेंट आने लग गया अब, राइट? बिकॉज यू वेंट 3 whys. Now you ask him why he increased the price, why you increase the price. What he will say? Because the vendor increased the price, right? I mean, why vendor increase the price if you ask? He will say that because we are dependent on that vendor. So from sales reduction to the dependency on the vendor, you are able to link because you are able to do a YY analysis. अभी अगर वो vendor पे dependent है, that means, and if the competitor is not dependent or there are other players in the market, that means he has to identify those players. Or we as an auditor, we may have to do some research and identify and try to find out how such case, where he can procure the materials from.
Sir, if you are a smart auditor and you can go to management that look, your competitor has not increased the price, you have increased the price, you better close your business. Tomorrow after 3 years, you will have a same or same this business. So you better open your eyes and make a perfect, strong recommendation that am I able to justify sustain this position or not?
Correct.
Yes, I can. Yes, I will feel that. I will cut it. Yes, otherwise, if you don't do it today, tomorrow he will do it again.
True. Just 2 minutes. Yeah. And see, interactions with the process owners again is one of the important part of the execution. कि आप process owner से data लेना है, आप क्या relationship बना रहे हो. Suppose the data is pending for a long time, आप गए and you tell Mr. Vivek, the data has been pending for a long time. I need to escalate this. So, do you think he will support? Instead, अगर आप उसको बोलोगे, suppose if you greet him, good morning sir, कैसे हैं? And then start a conversation, then try to start a conversation, you may see a different approach altogether. And maybe अगर आपने 3 या 4 बार follow up किया है, तो auditee will try to ignore you. वो छुपेगा आपसे, आप जहाँ पे भी दिखोगे वो भागेगा आपसे. So try something different. उससे मिलो लेकिन उससे पूछो ही मत डेटा के बारे में. वो थोड़ा सोचेगा अरे भाई ये उसके अलावा भी कभी आता है मेरे पास, right? So keep on thinking something new ways. Like suppose if he is wearing a blue shirt, अचानक से yes, the shirt is looking very nice on you. He will start thinking in a different direction. He will be happy and he will feel that they are trying to collaborate. So try and see how you can talk to the auditee and make him feel that you are here to support him, unless he is committing some fraud or not. कभी ऐसा नहीं कि अरे वो मॉल में मिल गया प्रोसेस ओनर तो उसको वहीं पे बोल के अरे मेरा डेटा आपने अभी तक नहीं दिया. So don't do that because he will otherwise keep ignoring you. So ऑफिस के अलावा भी कुछ चीज़ें हैं which you need to try and see so that you maintain that kind of relationship and rapport with him so that he appreciates. Because आपका जब renewal होता है तो see management is there but all the HODs also play a key role. Even if you are in-house team members or you are outsourced, or HODs play a key role. They will be your spokesperson, how you have behaved, how you have done the audits, what kind of value additions you have done. Yeah. Yeah. So see, suppose client has not defined, right? And it doesn't take much time to define the key controls. We can always be proactive and define those key controls and tell client कि हमारा ये theme, आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते आप कि 20 controls ले जाके client को बोलोगे कि these are key controls, he will not have time to read through that. But you can say that a particular sub process, saying that कि आपको लग रहा है कि negotiation in a procurement process is a key for me. So you can focus only on the negotiation and client will also agree or he will suggest, no, negotiation is under control, you look at the vendor onboarding phase. There I feel there could be dummy vendors, right? So we need to define certain sub-processes, make them agree to the client and take it forward. See, it is very important that client considered as a profit center. Then only your engagement will get renewed. And as an internal audit team members, also your promotions and all will depend on that. The moment they start looking at you as a cost center, that gradually will indicate that you are going to be out soon. So you have to be a profit center. And to be a profit center, you have to keep on analyzing new ways of doing the audit. For example, in one of our client in a logistics में हमने logistics spend को audit किया. See, we look at diesel spend, कि diesel में price fluctuations हुआ कि नहीं हुआ, क्या rate है, rate benchmark किया, ये सब, right? What we did was कि government is doing various initiatives, quality of road is improving. अभी जब quality of road improve हो रही है तो transit time भी कम लगना चाहिए, right? अगर transit time कम लग रहा है तो transporter has to pass on that benefit to me as well. Even though the diesel rates remain same, everything remains same. Transit time reduce हुआ है तो definitely there is some cost reduction which is happening to the transporter. उसका vehicle उतना दिन utilize नहीं हुआ, he can utilize it somewhere else. So we took out a dump of all the routes which 2 years back, how much time it used to take, that we were able to find through Google Map and through other sources. कि 2 साल पहले मुझे 6 दिन लग रहा था, आज मुझे 3 दिन लग रहा है उस जगह पहुंचने में. और transporter का rate has increased based on diesel price. Transporter has not passed on any reduction, but we should get some reduction from him because he's gaining out, and we saved around 10 crores for the client. Just this analysis, and इसमें it doesn't take time. You have to just get the data and identify the differences. See, देखिए best क्या है? See, it all depends on what you have on platter. To be honest, एकदम practical answer दे रहा हूँ, theoretical नहीं दे रहा हूँ. अभी आपका कोई client के संग engagement है, if you are a consultant, client के संग engagement and you already know this year you have done stupendously well. आपने 15-20 करोड़ का savings निकाल दिया, आपके पास अच्छे findings है, client has appreciated. अभी आप 2 साल जाओगे, 1 करोड़ का और saving निकालोगे, nothing is going to, you are going to increase your cost, right? So stop there. कि ये है, and if client insist, यार मैंने इतना already कर दिया, you give me a separate fees, right? But अभी situation अगर उल्टा ले लें, अभी this year जो भी findings मिली, ज़्यादा मिली नहीं आपको, अभी मिली नहीं तो आपको तो जाना पड़ेगा, थोड़ा cost कर लें तो engagement ही चला जाएगा. So go back, 5 years भी जाओ. हाँ, I think you have to apply your judgment so that your engagement is intact and you are able to add value. So you, or ask client कि I am going 5 years back, it requires efforts, you pay me accordingly. So then you can go 10 years, 5 years, number of years they want. Because we have done certain assignments जहाँ पे 6 साल भी गए हैं because to unearth the fraud, and they were very clear that there will be recoveries which will be happening. So they knew that if they spend 10 lakhs also on us for going back, they will recover more than 50, 60 lakhs. So then it makes sense. Yeah, any more questions? Yeah, please.
Hi. So I have question on applicability of internal audit. As per Section 138, Companies Act has listed that it is applicable to listed entities. Then for public companies there are threshold, private companies there are threshold. Now in a scenario where holding company is listed, so for subsidiary companies, the threshold which are applicable and all the subsidiaries are private companies, okay?
Okay.
So now the unlisted subsidiary companies, for them, threshold would be applicable of private companies, or it would be considered as deemed public company and threshold of public companies would be applicable?
See, to be honest, I need to check. I don't have an answer ready for this.
No problem.
Unless anyone would be answering her.
Companies Act 2013, Section 138. No, Companies Act. There are separate thresholds. No.
Maybe need to be
No
checked.
problem,
We can
no
do
problem.
it.
It's okay.
Any other questions? Thanks for the support. Thank you.